All right, in today's video, we're going to talk about how real estate commissions work. Now, you need to know this not only for the real estate world, but also for the real estate licensing exam. So I'm going to kind of illustrate how the process works. Now, there are a few variations to this depending on what part of the country you're in. However, for the real estate exam, you need to know this process right here. And quite frankly, it pretty much mirrors the real estate community across the country with a few exceptions. So we have four parties in a transaction we have to know. The first one is the listing broker and the listing agent. Remember, the listing agent's the one that goes out, procures the listing contract from the seller. They put the sign in the yard. Then we have the buyer's agent and the buyer's broker. The listing agent puts the sign in the yard. The listing agent works for the listing broker, who's the designated broker. And then we have the buyer's agents, all of them that are out there in that community. And then the buyer's agent obviously works for a broker as well. So how does the commission work? So we have buyer agent here. This agent takes their buyer client through this seller's home. They write an offer. The deal gets put together. It goes to closing. Now everybody is owed a commission. How does that work? And the first thing I want to talk about here is the commission itself. How much commission? What's the average? What's the standard? All right, those type of things. And we have to understand a law, and you need to know this for your real estate licensing exam. I guarantee you there's going to be a question on this, and it's called the Sherman Antitrust Act. All right, the Sherman Antitrust Act, it forbids and makes illegal two or more brokers conspiring to charge the same commission. We can't even use terms like standard or community average in a listing presentation because it's simply inferring to the client that that two or more companies got together and conspired to set the commission. Commissions are absolutely negotiable between the brokerage firm on behalf of, or the listing agent on behalf of the brokerage firm, and the seller, both singular. All right. So this listing agent is going to negotiate with the seller for the total commission that's going to be owed at the sale of the home. Now, understand, two or more brokers can't conspire. So let's say that 12th Street Realty and 13th Street Realty, the two brokers get together and say, listen, we have the majority, between us, we have the majority of the transactions in our community, which is not a requirement. But let's say that's the case, and I'll tell you what, if you only charge 6% and we only charge 6%, then no matter who gets the listing, they're still going to get 6%. That would be a violation of the Sherman Antitrust Act, all right? So it's illegal. But a company, singular, 12th Street Realty could mandate to all of the agents that works under them that the minimum commission that the agents can charge is 5% or 6% or whatever it is. A company can do it, but two or more companies cannot get together and set an average or anything. They can't conspire at all. You have to understand that. That's a very important concept to understand before we move forward with the commissions, all right? So we have the listing agent that went out, negotiated with the seller a commission for that transaction. Right? Let's just say that they negotiated a $10,000 commission. That's the total commission that the seller's going to pay at closing. All right. So what's going to happen is at closing, the listing broker is going to collect that commission. All right. Now, how much does the buyer's agent end up with? Now, this is where the details and the numbers come in. This is where you really don't so much need to know this for the licensing exam, but you have to know it for, your profession. Now, in almost every community, brokers get together and they have like the multiple listing service and those type of things, and they will advertise, not get together and conspire to set payouts, but they will advertise what the payout is. So this listing broker, for example, is going to advertise on the multiple listing service how much the buyer's agent is going to receive of that $10,000. There are some common scenarios that we see. We may see a 40-60 scenario, meaning the listing broker company gets 60% of that $10,000 or $6,000, and then the buyer's broker, whichever buyer's broker procures it, will get 40% of that $10,000 or $4,000 of the $10,000. That's kind of that. I see that quite often when I travel the United States doing training. There can be another way of doing it, and this could be 50-50. That's another one that I see. Or it's a certain percentage of the purchase price. So we might actually see something like 2.4% of the total purchase price. All right. So the listing broker is saying on a $100,000 home that the buyer's side is going to get 2.4% or $2,400 based on a $100,000 purchase price. This is very local, and it depends on the local real estate community. The key I want you to remember here, very important, the brokers within that community are not getting together setting what the payout is. They're simply, each individual broker is advertising to all the other brokers what the cooperating buyer payout is. And that's a very important distinction here. All right, so we have, we have the listing broker that has collected $10,000. Now, how much is the buyer side going to get? Well, we're going to have a scenario. Let's say that it's a 60-40 scenario, for example, here. That means that the listing broker is going to collect and keep $6,000, and the buyer's broker is going to receive $4,000. Now, how much of this $6,000 does the listing agent get, and how much of this $4,000 does the buyer's agent get? And I can't answer that because it's across the board. I will tell you the most common that I see is anywhere between 70% all the way down to 25%. So that means, and actually it's probably a little bit higher. I've seen some places that have 90. So basically what happens is of that $6,000 that the listing broker collected, the listing agent's going to receive 90% of that all the way down to 25. It depends on what you negotiate with your designated broker. All right, same thing over here. How much of this $4,000 is the buyer agent going to get? Well, it's going to be anywhere from 90% all the way down to 25. It can actually be lower than 25. I'm just kind of giving you the ranges that I have seen. All right, and every company has a different model here. Some companies say that after they base it on production in a 12-month period. So maybe your first 5 deals you get 50%, and then every 10th deal after that your commission increases by 10 percentage points, and then it starts all over on the anniversary date or on January 1st. The point is, there's no set standard with this. It is just whatever you negotiate with your broker. All right? There's one other, I guess, program for commissions that are out there. It's called 100%, or what we call 100% agent. And that means the listing agents and the buyer's agents, they pay their designated broker so much every month. Now, I have seen a couple of places where it's paid quarterly or even annually. Most common, though, is every month. So maybe you pay your broker, let's say, $1,000 every month. That means you pay $1,000 to your broker whether you sell anything or not. But in return is you get to keep 100% of that $6,000. Or you get to keep 100% of that $4,000 if you're the buyer's agent. All right, and this number too can vary depending on what you negotiate with your designated broker. The last thing I want to talk about, then we're going to move on, and that is what cannot happen is a broker from a different company paying the opposite agent. Let me tell you what I mean here. Listing broker collects the commission at closing. They have that $10,000. $4,000 is owed to the broker. The listing broker is going to send the $4,000 over to the buyer's broker. The buyer's broker then pays the buyer's agent. What cannot happen is the listing agent paying the buyer's agent from a different company directly without written consent. There must be written consent and permission from the buyer's broker for this to happen. It's very rare that it actually happens, but it does require written consent, and you need to know that as well for your real estate licensing exam.